So back in 2019, I used to weigh about 240 pounds. And if you see this picture right here, I look like Peter Griffin, and not in the good way. I just always want to be myself and be comfortable in my own skin, whether I'm at parties or at the pool. But in all honesty, at the end of the day, when I looked at myself in the mirror, I just kind of looked at myself and was thinking, how did I become like this? Is this what I'm meant to look like? And obviously, no, this is something I was really angry at myself. And a lot of people just say, oh, you need to lose weight to look good, to feel healthy. But honestly, I was just afraid of being fat. So I decided to take the matters into my own hands. And maybe you're just like that too. And because of that, I went from this to this. And honestly, I never looked back on this, and I want to help you guys out too. All this was done while still being able to eat sweets, and I was able to go from 240 pounds up to 180 pounds. So if you guys want to keep your sweets and not go on a crazy diet and just follow these simple principles to help you lose weight, this is the video for you. So let's get right into this. If you guys don't know me, my name is Dalton, and I'm a fitness nerd as well as a food lover. And if you're someone that breathes on this planet, that means you probably like sweets too. So I want to make these videos to help you guys out when it comes to losing weight or fitness in general. And you can either be on your first cut and wanting to lose weight or your fifth cut. And regardless of where you are, I feel like these principles are able to help anyone out. So let's start off with none other than what everyone talks about is protein. So obviously it's no secret on the internet that people say, get your protein, get your protein, get your protein. It's pretty obvious now on the internet that you'll always hear people say that. They always have their own numbers and what they recommend in terms of how much protein you should have. But the next layer, if you figure out how much protein you actually need, whether that is 150 grams to 180 grams or even 200 grams, there's a factor that I always feel like it's not really as considered as much, and I just call it the protein to calorie ratio. That's the only way I could really think of calling this. And it's just a very simple principle. You could do this for anything, whether you're trying to get down to a steep cut to getting to, like, for me and my height, 5'8", about 160 pounds or 150 pounds, to whether you're super overweight and like 6'4", you could still apply this principle. And here's what I mean by that. Let's say you are wanting to get something at the grocery store and people just say, get your protein, bro. So you might buy chicken, you might buy steak, you might buy fish, you might buy all these things. And that's a great start to have. But one thing a lot of people forget is having how much protein is in the calories. And when it comes to this, let's say, for example, you have 80-20 ground beef, you might be eating 250 calories for 20 grams of protein. And people are like, okay, well, that's a decent number, but you can honestly get something way better. So like, let's say, for example, with Greek yogurt, I love Greek yogurt in my opinion. What you could do is that there's other options such as 0% or 5%. And sometimes if you look at the labels on them, they'll have something, whether that's like 150, 160 calories. But if you look at something like 0% fat-free yogurt, that's going to be like 90 to 100. And why is this important? Because in the long term of things, when you have protein or whatever type of food they have, like steak as well, the leaner it is, the less calories you have, and generally the more protein you'll have too. So for example, I could have, let's say, 100 calories for 20 grams, or I could have 200 or 300 for 20 grams. And if you're trying to be in a caloric deficit, especially if you're trying to lose weight, then having the most protein possible in the least amount of calories is essential for anything. And yes, of course, this is probably going to be like very lean meats or other lean fish, or even, fat-free yogurt. Those are like the most common types of things. And personally, that's what I like doing. That's what I go for. If you're vegan, you might have something like a protein powder, which I've done as well. So having something just within the most protein with least amount of calories is the most important thing to have. And also on top of that, because you are having less calories now, you can have a lot more room to have those sweets that you want. So for example, if I had that 100 calories and had that much protein, then maybe I can have like 100, 200, or even 300 calories of just sweets eating in. And that is a huge mental relief in terms of what I actually want, which is having sweets. And of course you guys want that too. And on top of that, if you have them at the same time, you're probably not going to feel as hungry because protein curbs your appetite in most cases. It really depends, but generally more times than not, that is the case of what it is. But obviously that's just not enough, because you wouldn't be watching this video if that was the case. And because that you're having less calories overall and still getting enough protein in, you're able to backfill the rest of the calories with anything that you like, such as like your cookies or your donuts or like cakes or waffles, because waffles are better than pancakes in my opinion, just saying. But you can apply this to basically any type of protein or sweet that you want, and therefore you will still be in your caloric deficit overall. And yes, of course, you got to be conscious. That's just basic mindfulness, but that's what will actually go later in the video. But except you can actually apply this into another spot, and that is with your sweets too. So here's what I mean by that is I would like to call this the opposite of the protein to calorie ratio, and that is the sweets to calorie ratio, aka having sugar-free options. And not just sugar-free options, but just knowing on the market and being conscious of what you're actually having in terms of calories for your sweets. So here's what I mean by that. Let's say there is regular ice cream that could be about 300 calories of what you're eating, or you can have something like Halo Top, which is more volume but less calories, or just the same amount of calories but way more volume. It makes a lot more sense to go with the lower calorie version because I can have more of it. And this is a very common thing I feel like a lot of people forget is when you have sweets, it's pretty self-explanatory in terms of just not going overboard with the calories, but there's a little bit more to it than that. So what I'm referring to is the same thing with the protein to calorie ratio. You could say the same thing with your sweet to calorie ratio. And when I'm referring to this is, let's say like you want to have your ice cream or a donut or cookies. There is plenty of options on the market nowadays, guys, where you can have that lower calorie version. So let's say for me, I like having ice cream sometimes. And because of that, I can now, instead of having like 600 calories of ice cream, what I could do is just pick something like Halo Top or another sugar-free ice cream and have less sugar, but also have more volume overall and not feel guilty about it. And this is for anything, whether you're wanting to enjoy stuff with like cookies or pastries, whatever it is. There's tons of things that you could probably find, whether it's at Whole Foods, Amazon, Walmart, where they have certain options like that. And this doesn't even have to be like those, crazy things where it comes to, oh, I got to sacrifice all the calories. And to be more specific, what I'm referring to is, let's say if you have something like Coke or root beer, which is maybe like 140 to 160 calories, you can instead just have Olipop, which is like a fourth of that and less sugar too. And it still tastes good. I mean, in my opinion, I don't really taste that big of a difference overall in the long term of things, but that's just my personal preference. And this could be for anything else that you want. And that could also be for things such as like, let's say for sugar itself. So instead of having just brown sugar or white sugar with whatever you have, just have it with stevia or monk fruit. And yes, of course, it's going to taste a little bit different, but if you do it the correct way or in a smart way where you can apply this to different types of sweets, whether you're making them or you're buying them, it can be virtually interchangeable and it tastes exactly the same, at least in my opinion, just for that. So in terms of intake, that is the main points of that. And I'm just solely referring to basic calorie deficit, getting enough protein, and also having those sweets. Obviously, you can go into other parts of like, oh, what about the vegetables, the fruits, and all that? That's not what this video is about. This is about looking jacked and having less calories so you lose the weight while still enjoying the foods you love. But you can also focus on the other side of the equation, and that is just burning more calories. And there's lots of ways to do that, but I'm gonna go over some of the simple ways that you can actually do that. When I first started to just burn calories in general, I mainly focused on strength training about 3 times a week. And for some of you, you might think that that's actually quite a lot, or maybe none at all. So you might be thinking, well, how are you able to burn so many calories just by working out 3 times a week? And that is actually all the stuff outside of the training sessions. And that is mainly walking a lot. And when I mean walking like crazy, about 10 to 20,000 steps every single day. And this could be like you walking upstairs, this could be you walking in your park or in your neighborhood, or this could be you just walking for the sake of walking on something like a treadmill where you don't go anywhere. It honestly, there are so many ways to just get more steps in. And this is personally has always been helping me, not just to lose weight, but also maintain weight over time, because all the little pieces of like that's what really matters on the day-to-day things, because we always like to focus on the training of us getting like our cardio in, but walking at the end of the day is like such a really easy effort to do for anyone. But why walking? Why not something more intense like, running long distances or doing cycling or doing HIIT cardio? And here's a few reasons why. One is because it's super easy to do and you could do it practically anywhere. So like I said, you could go in multiple different areas. And second reason is you don't have a lot of work to do. It's not very taxing on your body. If you do something like HIIT cardio or swimming, cycling, or running, you might feel pretty hungry after, and that is normal. That's what's meant to happen. But if you just walk, you're not going to have that same urge to really eat a lot of stuff. So that's why I personally preferred walking. And then the last reason would also is because it's the most sustainable and minimal effort to actually do. So I'm not just referring to minimal in terms of how easy it is to do, but also in terms of gear, because if you need a bike to do cycling, you have to have the bike. You can't do cycling without a bike. Mostly in running, like normally what's best is getting like running shoes, or at a gym you need to pay for the membership or at least find some weights to lug around. Walking is anyone can practically do it in terms of just ease of effort to find a way to get it done. And on top of that, you don't have to actually do it all in one session. If you're doing something like cardio, it would be very weird to run a mile and then just stop and then wait like an hour later to do it again, like every hour. In walking though, it's very natural. You can just go anywhere and just naturally walk. You don't need an actual session for it, which makes it way more sustainable in terms of that. Because if you try to HIIT cardio every single day or try to run every single day and you're not equipped for that, then you're gonna feel dead inside, especially on the HIIT cardio. Because I've tried it before, honestly sucks in terms of just doing it sustainably every single day. So that's personally why I like doing walking more. And regardless of either of these steps that you take, whether that is making sure that you're not having too high of calories from your protein or your sweets, or even just walking every day, there's one underrated thing, and it's super reliable. A lot of people talk about this, but not in this type of way, is having data points. And when I'm referring to data points, I'm referring to, you could say, calorie tracking, but it's not just calorie tracking. There is a lot of different ways you could track data points, whether you want to track calories or not. And personally, I use Macro Factor to check all my calories now. I've been using it for a couple months and it's been so easy to use. And I'm not sponsored by them. And I personally love using them because it's even easier to get this weight off, whether I want to go on a cut now or whether I did it at the time. And I wish I had it. But it's not just the calories in terms of that. You can also track other data points, and the more data points that you have, generally the better you will do, just from what I've seen and what I've done personally from losing the 60 pounds. So an example is just going on the scale. And yes, this is one data point, and obviously there's a lot of other factors that go into it, but that's why having more data points is better. So if you realize that, hey, I haven't lost any weight in let's say whatever time, then you can use a calorie tracker like Macro Factor to see, okay, well, what's actually happening? Are you actually burning enough calories or having a certain amount of intake, or too much of an intake actually? And therefore you need to cut back on how much you're eating. Maybe that's a way. Or maybe you need to move more, or maybe you need to do a lot of different things. And that's generally better than just kind of guessing and not okay, well, maybe I could do this and just see how it works. And normally that's a recipe for disaster. So this could be anything such as tracking your calories, no matter how much water you're taking throughout the day, your hip circumference, your waist circumference, your neck size, your weight. There's tons of different metrics that you can put, but normally for me, when I first started doing this, the only few things I was actually checking was how much protein I was having, and if I was hitting that, how many calories I was having, and then what was the weight. Those are kind of the only main three things that I focused on, and it did well for me. And more than likely, it would do well for anybody else in terms of that, because those are like the pillars of everything that we've been talking about right now. And another way to get more data points is actually having a fitness tracker or a smartwatch or anything that can help you digitally in keeping track of this data. So for example, like I like having Garmin, but you can also use anything else such as like Fitbit or Apple or Whoop. There's tons of different devices that you could find, but I wouldn't focus just solely on burning calories. I would focus more on like, okay, how many steps am I getting throughout the day? What's my stress levels like? What about how well I'm sleeping? Just normally more data points allows you to have better decisions in what you're doing for this. And normally for me, if you have never had a fitness tracker before, the most simple one honestly is like Fitbit. You can just use it, like get the cheapest one. It's probably like 50 to 100 bucks. And you could just use it as your step counter, and just seeing that thing, just the pedometer and how many steps you're getting on your watch, that could be almost like an addicting game for you. And personally, I love that in my opinion, because it motivates me to just get a goal like that every day. When you want to be more advanced or just be more nerdy in your fitness gear, having something like an Apple Watch Ultra could be beneficial, or you could just have the Fitbit and keep it forever. Honestly, it's up to you in terms of that. But even with all these data points, and if you're following the principles up to now, what really matters more is the mindset behind this. What I mean by that is having the flexibility to not kill yourself over everything. And obviously there's probably some people that you have met that either go from one diet to the next and they can't stick to it. And that is normally because of how rigid they're being in terms of their diet, as well as committing. Now, those would kind of go hand in hand, but normally referring to is being too rigid in what you're having. So when I used to want to lose weight, one thing I would do is that I would just flip to one diet and I had no idea what to do. And I wasn't even thinking really heavily about it. I was like, all right, I'm just gonna go straight into, personally what I did was go to keto. And I'm not bagging on keto. If you have used keto to lose weight or anything else like paleo or vegan, good for you. I've tried them too. I've lost a lot of weight on any type of diet, because what matters more is having less calories, not the specific type of diet that you're having. And when I went to keto, I had no idea what I was doing, and I just put myself in this box. And because of that, I just ended up imploding and just binge eating all over the place because I just couldn't handle it. And this is only in a matter of like 3 weeks to a month. But when I started to become more flexible and not exactly restraining myself to anything, I was able to just lose the weight more naturally at a slow, long pace. And that is one thing we always forget about, is we just want to lose weight as fast as possible. And yeah, that's a pretty legit thing. And if you follow these principles, you're probably going to do that. But in terms of being rigid, it's how long you stay with it. So it doesn't matter what diet you pick, as long as you have basic principles each day. For example, getting enough protein in, not eating too much, and also being able to have sweets, just simple things like that. And rather than hitting like, okay, I need to have this much sleep, or I need to have this exact amount of steps a day. And normally having like ranges is better than just having specific set points and trying to hit them every day. Because there will be a day that you will go off. There'll be one day that you feel disappointed in yourself, but having the understanding at the end of the day and say, do you want, there's always the next day and I can always do better, and committing to that, hence and committing, you will be able to rise out on top and have that dream physique you've always wanted. And one thing I would recommend, especially if I was talking to my younger self who wanted to lose all the weight, and that is just being more curious about yourself. Because a lot of times when we just start wanting to lose weight, we don't even think about the things that we like or the things that we like doing at the end of the day. So for example, like for me, I don't like having asparagus. Asparagus is terrible. I don't know why people have it. It's just, but that's personal preference for me. And same thing with like certain types of protein that you might like or not like. Some people hate Greek yogurt, and that's totally fine. Some people hate meat, and that's okay too. Some people hate like carrots. It's random. Everyone has their own preferences. But understanding those preferences that you like, make sure that you follow the principles of what I was talking about, and then you can apply them in your everyday life. And that's what I'm referring to the flexibility of this, and not just focusing being in one box and hopefully it might just come out. And obviously if you could do it, but remember, it's about being sustainable and understanding yourself at the end of the day, so you can know your habits, you know your lifestyle, you know the things and your insecurities that are in the back of your head, because we all have them. But just following those things each and every day, that's what really matters. And if you guys want more videos like this, make sure that you subscribe down below. And I'm actually gonna make a couple videos for me getting into running and other things like strength training. So if you guys like that, subscribe down below, and I'll see you guys later. All right, take care, guys.